Well, it's in the salad DVD because we make a mayonnaise sauce vinaigrette in there, so that would be the place to see that at. So you can put it in a container like this, a tall cylinder, and zap it with a portable blender, which is what I'm going to do. Excuse me. Or you can put it in a mixing bowl with a whisk and whisk it together. Now this is going to make something a little bit more smooth. Something that you might think is emulsified because it all looks like one thing. It's not emulsified if it separates later. So you can't take two things and turn them into one thing, which is what making this emulsification would probably be defined as. You can't do that if it's going to separate later. So that means it's only temporarily emulsified. And that's what this does. Now, if I had an egg yolk in here, which I wouldn't do, I wouldn't make it this way if I was going to put an egg yolk in it. I'd make it on a mixer on a slow speed. But if I had an egg yolk in here, it would last a little bit longer, okay? But I'm going to take some fresh chopped herbs and put them in there. And I'm going to do that real fast right now. Our producer picked these out of his garden today, which I was very impressed with. This is the first time his garden has bloomed this many herbs in one shot. So we've got a little bit of fresh thyme here. We're going to pick that off the stems. Thyme is always so time-consuming to pick, by the way. It's the only thing I don't like about it, but it tastes so good for this kind of thing. You'll see and notice that I use a lot of dried thyme in a lot of the cooking in this library, but dried thyme is not good necessarily for certain items like salad dressing. See, I'm calling this salad dressing, even though it's really olive oil vinaigrette, because I think we're going to be using this on some cold or warm asparagus in the vegetable class today. So I guess it's really not salad dressing. That's a little bit like calling a nonstick pan an omelet pan, as if to suggest that you can't only make omelets in it. Alrighty, now we got some fresh basil here. And we got a little bit, excuse me, of fresh oregano, which has big, hardy stems, which you don't want to get in here. You certainly can put tarragon. You could even put finely minced rosemary leaves in here. You certainly could put sage in here, chervil, dill, to name a few. Not necessarily all of those things, but you might take 2 or 3 of them and put them in there. Cilantro. Love cilantro. All right, there's our picked herbs. And let's get those chopped up real quick. Herbs, by the way, when you're chopping them, have this very unusual characteristic, and that is they give off more flavor when they're just chopped. So it's always best to wait until just the last minute to chop the herbs and put them in the food, if you can. Especially things like this that are cold. Meaning, after it's chopped, certain amounts of the aroma and the fragrance has a way of dissipating as it sits in a refrigerator covered up or whatever, waiting to be used. Okay, some fresh herbs there. All right, let's hit this with, no, I'll tell you what, let's do some in the bowl first so you can see what the bowl version looks like, and then we'll dump it in here and zap it with the zapper. How's that? Let's put it in a bowl, and now let me remind you that this combination is a vinaigrette without the mustard, and it can be used without the mustard completely. We're going to mix this together first, get this all mixed up, then we're going to throw some of the red wine vinegar in there. Now the next question is, what kind of vinegar? I talked about the oils a little bit. Now we'll talk about the vinegar. By the way, I love red wine vinegar. And there's this, a quick, piece of trivia about vinegar is that this whole business about the more recent marketing of the infused flavored vinegars, like you'll see vinegar on a store shelf that's got a bunch of garlic cloves in it or whatever, and they'll call it, garlic vinegar. The suggestion this is a new way of doing things with infusing foods with these different flavors like this. It's just probably the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time, only because I happen to know that as recent as the late 14th century and the 15th century, the French were selling infused vinegars on the streets on the weekends in Paris. You could go buy infused vinegars 500 years ago. So there's nothing new about this. But then again, there's that old saying, it's so old that it's new, you know. I think that would certainly apply to the infused vinegars that are in the marketplace today. Keeping in mind that you making infused vinegar only means you putting stuff in the vinegar or the oil until it takes on the flavor of the thing that you put in. Sometimes you even cook the oil with the stuff in it a little bit to really get the flavor out of whatever it happens to be, but usually not. So we'll mix that up, and I'm going to use some red wine vinegar. Now, you certainly can use some white wine vinegar, okay? All right, let's give that a taste. And I'm going to show you what this looks like on a plate. Man, this is good. Excuse me. That small amount of vinegar that I put in here is enough vinegar for all of this. What percentage of vinegar to oil is that? I've heard people say things like, excuse me, 2 parts oil, 1 part vinegar. If you did that, everybody would go like this because there'd be too much vinegar in it. So forget about that. And forget about any formula. That's 3 parts oil, 1 part vinegar, or any of that. Make it the way you just saw me make it. Put the oil in, add some vinegar, taste it. I think I'm going to try it again real quick, but I may have just accidentally gotten a bunch of vinegar. That's good enough for me. So, I have about 3/4 of a cup, excuse me, of extra virgin olive oil. And I have about 3 tablespoons, 2 or 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. So, first I'm going to put some on a plate so you can see what it looks like the way it is, okay? Let's get it mixed up. Now, part of the reason this particular dressing took the small amount of vinegar that it took, there you go, is because the mustard has got some vinegar qualities to it also. Vinegar is added to Dijon mustard, generally. Okay, that's what it looks like unzapped. Now, this is nice. Remember, there's no rule of thumb on whether or not you should mix this with the blender. It depends on the look and how you want the salad to be, all right? Now we're going to dump it back in here and give it a zap. Pour some of that on a plate. See what that's like. You turned on this skills video to make vinaigrette, and you thought this was going to be simple. It is simple, but there's a whole range of different options that you have when you approach this topic, okay? All right, let's give this a zap.